Hey, welcome to my Kingdom Hearts 1FM damage calculator. Uh, this is just going to be a pretty off-the-cusp video that I'm recording without any kind of a script, just to walk you through the basics of how this tool works, what it's for, uh, and give some credits and shout-outs to the people who helped me get here over the last month that it's taken to develop this. So you can read it on screen already, but basically this is a comprehensive data set and damage calculator for all damage in Kingdom Hearts 1FM. I've made about 20 custom functions that handle all of the different math and rounding and all of that sort of stuff. And then I've built you guys 3 different tools that you can use to interact with them. The first tool is called Scanga, and it's basically a single target scan or damage calculation. We'll take a look at that in a second. The second tool is called world cards, and world cards are basically the full set of enemies, the entire data list, but you can filter it, you can sort it by world or game state, which you'll be able to sort by name and location. And these are going to have a lot of useful information. You can see how your stats currently stack up to them. You can see what MP or strength you would need to, one-shot the enemies or deal max damage in the case of bosses. And then on page 3, tool 3, you have Sora's hit list, which was a really fun one to design, which is why I put it in that little blurb. Basically, it's a variation of the world cards concept, but it's a static list, and it's more designed for Kingdom Hearts 1FM Rando, in that these are all kind of important fights that you'll want to know what your breakpoints are for when you're doing the randomizer. And the hit list tool was actually developed with the intention of being locked to a single screen, so it works on a 1080p monitor, full screen. You never have to scroll horizontally or vertically, and it's intended that you can tab out and quickly change your levels or your stats, and you can actually check off enemies and they will disappear from the list, which was really fun to develop, and I'm looking forward to showing you guys that one. We've also got a couple extra sheets here at the bottom. As you can see, we've got the actual database. We've got a math behind the curtain page, which is basically where I put a lot of... Some of it was necessary, some of it was unnecessary, but basically I put a lot of the functions and math and tables and how they're all working there visible, so that anybody who's curious in how spreadsheets work, or wants to just see what I came up with, can kind of get a look at what I did. And then, of course, I have some extra data sets. This is an ugly page. I will show it off, but there's absolutely no formatting on it. These are absolutely essential to making the tools work. They were not optional. And they basically just, I think I have 6 or 7 little tables there that I'm basically using as helper tables in some of the functions. So let's go ahead and pop over to Scanga. So this is your primary tool. This is pretty much everything you could ever want to know about a single enemy in Kingdom Hearts 1. Your input is up here in the top left. You can see it kind of outlined in a thicker black bold border. You can go ahead and pick any enemy in the game, and then you can pick any version of that enemy that'll show up. You can input your strength, your MP, your magic levels, your Keyblade, all of this stuff. Everything else on this sheet is entirely static. You do not have to interact with any of it, but what you can do is, if you want to, you could drag any of these little modules around and it won't break. Let me go ahead and undo that. So if you don't like this layout, that's totally fine. I designed this intentionally so that if you wanted to go ahead and grab something, if you want to make yourself like a little crib sheet down here, that's why there's so much empty space, you can do that. So you can build whatever tools you want in whatever order you want. But you only ever have to input up here. If you pick an enemy that doesn't, here, let's pick something like this. If you pick an enemy and you get a bunch of value and NA errors, don't worry, that's normal. We're not using any scripts. So you're going to have to just come back to version and reselect a valid version of that enemy, and then you'll load up just fine. As far as this button goes, Berserker, only click this if you want to calculate for when Berserker would be active. This is effectively giving you +4 strength. That's all it's really doing. And then let's go ahead and pick an enemy that has enough health. You'll see over here that the technique orb lit up when I selected the invisible. That's because the invisible has at least 300 health. When EXP0 is lit up, if you are playing on proud mode and you use the ability EXP0, there's an explanation of how it works, roughly speaking, over here on the right side of the page. But basically, it's going to change how your minimum damage dealt to enemies. It's not boosting your damage, but it is changing the minimum damage that an enemy can take instead of their normal hitman. And if we look at something like Ansem 1 in World of Chaos, you'll see that it damage 0 tier 2, or more colloquially known as damage storage or finisher storage, makes the minimum amount of damage he can deal from valid attacks 18, which is why things like Mushu and Fire Spam are so powerful. Because if you look over here at the elemental magic area, all of this is broken into current damage and maximum damage. So in normal situations, Ansem 1 can only take 7 damage from a fire type spell or Mushu. But with damage 0 tier 2 active, he's taking far more than 7. He's taking 18, so he's taking more than double. But again, it's not boosting your strength, it is increasing this value. The rest of it is fairly intuitive, I think. If you pull up certain enemies that have more complicated I guess, context, there are some comments and extra notes here that will just give you a little bit of context for that. So moving on, we're going to go ahead and look at the world cards page. Now this is the default layout of the world card, and it is completely unusable in my opinion. This is the entire data set of Kingdom Hearts. It is all 214 variants of enemies, and it's just a little too overwhelming to look at. But what you can do is you can come up here and you can pick any world, and then you can pick any game state. Now you may have noticed that that first change was very slow, and that is because if you have your world state and your game state selected to all, it will let you see everything, but the optimization isn't great, and there's nothing I could really do about that without using Google scripts, or, well, using the Google API to let me use JavaScript. But I intentionally challenged myself not to do that for this project. So I would not recommend working with this data set to all, but if you go ahead and use it in just, any of the worlds, any of the states, you're going to notice it's pretty much instantaneous. You can also click this button and it'll import your stats that you input here. So if you want to use a single stat block for your entire time with the tool, that's how you can do that. You can also switch to stat cap mode. Because right now, if I turn that back off, this is telling you how much damage you are currently dealing. So if we go ahead and give ourselves, say, 20 strength and 8 MP, you'll notice that a bunch of things changed. For starters, all of these lit up because we're now hitting that maximum damage. We are doing as much damage as we could possibly do with anything that is lit up here. And you can see we're not doing max damage with our physical attacks. Well, if you don't want to sit here and, type in multiple times to just increment up and see when it stops, what you can come over here and do is click on stat cap mode. And this will just tell you how much strength or MP you need in order to be doing the maximum damage. And for gravity, it's going to tell you the point at which your MP will one-shot from full HP. But do be advised that it's going to give you a lot of impossible results, as it is simply not possible to get enough MP, even with mods, even with, hex editing. It's simply you cannot, the game does not allow you to have that much MP. You can't one-shot bosses. But aside from that, you can come up here and change the critical and the finisher state, which you'll see better if we, turn this off. You can also change your Keyblade, which will, give you, this really doesn't matter too much. It's mostly whether or not it's going to give you a critical boost. Critical boost basically adds onto your strength if you get a critical hit. And of course, you can change your spell levels as well. So I'll set that back to just something nice for you guys to start with. I'll leave it on Traverse Town. And then this was a very fun page to create. This is the hit list for Sora. And like I had said in the intro, this is mostly intended for KH1 Rando, as this is a bit of a snapshot of all of the enemies in a world that are important, or not necessarily important, but they represent the breakpoints. So you may notice, for example, in Agrabah, there's only the bandit fight when you rescue Aladdin, Jafar, and Genie Jafar. I did not, on purpose, include Pot Centipede or Tigerhead, because Pot Centipede has the same stats as Genie Jafar, and I believe Tigerhead has very similar stats to regular Jafar. So there wasn't, in my opinion, much point in including those duplicate enemies. So you can kind of be confident here that if you see something represented in a world here, it's sort of representing the highest level that you need to reach for that segment of the game. I also wanted to make sure that we kept a lot of open space for the user down here. If you wanted to write notes, use it as a crib sheet in the middle of a rando seed, something like that. It has all the same inputs as world cards. You can switch to your Scanga stats. You can switch to stat cap mode. It'll tell you what's immune. But there are a couple differences. Firstly, you're going to notice these two columns at the end. GBP, which stands for Gravity Breakpoint. This is the breakpoint at which using your gravity spells, based on your current gravity, will no longer be doing as much damage as whatever is in your physical column. So if you have your physical attack set to non-critical, non-finisher, non-boosted, that's what it's going to compare against. But you'll watch it should dynamically change. If we give ourselves critical finishers, these values went up because now we're doing so much more damage with our basic attacks that will overtake gravity a lot quicker. The first row is in actual hit points, but a lot of people don't really know how to translate that. So I've also included the number of bars of HP. So 0.3 bars would be 1/3 of the green bar, 1.21 would be a full green bar, and 1/5 approximately of the yellow bar. which is all pretty cool. But you can also say you beat Leon. You don't want to see him. Your stats are he's going to be too colorful. As you get more abilities, more stuff, you're going to very quickly fill up these colors, and it might be distracting. So what you can do is you can come over and click on any enemy on this list, and it will dynamically remove them. And you can do it either by individual enemies, or you can do it by an entire world. Say you finish that world, or you got your hints and you don't need to go there, or whatever. Or you can even use it as like, I don't want to look at final fights. I don't want to look at World of Chaos. That's just distracting. So it's really up to you how you want to use this. But that is the functionality of this page. Like I said, it was a lot of fun to build. And I think it's a pretty powerful tool. And we'll go ahead and show off the actual database if you want to see it. This is not much to look at. This is just the actual database that we're pulling from. Here's some of the math that we're using. There are some dynamic drop-down menus like Simba's Charge, enemy versions on page 1. A lot of the conditional formatting required these fairly complicated things. If you want to read through this, I try to explain everything I was doing in as good detail as I could. And there's also a bit of a, simplified like playbox version of the basic damage formula that you can mess with. You can change your stats. You can give yourself, 30 strength. The enemy might have 27 defense. They're a boss, so they have a hit max of 20. They have, a 1.0 physical res. Most things aren't resistant to physical attacks. You can mess with this and see how much damage you would do in a vacuum. This is not the complete damage formula, but it's a fairly pared down, simplified version of it that you can probably look at and get a good idea of how the game works if you're curious. And then I said I'd show it off, but we won't linger quickly. This is just our final little extra data set. I've got a bunch of tables here that I'm using as secondary or tertiary tables for the sake of pages like this. So that's the entire tool. This took me about a month to make. I want to go back to the landing. And I really just want to take this time to give major shout outs to everybody in this list. Majoris is a fantastic guy. And honestly, this would not have happened without him. He really got the ball rolling. He was the one who sort of, went out and data collected and proved some of the data that we already had about how physical attacks work, how fire and blizzard worked. I'm really just picking up where he left off. We've got KSX, great guy, modder in the community. He actually made us a bunch of mods so that we could do this a lot more efficiently. I'd still be data collecting if not for him. Game Man of Color, another fantastic data hunter. He has done so much for level 1. And it was really cool to be able to talk with him and confer with him. And sometimes I was wrong, and he was able to put me on the right path. And other times he was just able to say, yeah, that makes sense. And it was very satisfying for me personally to see that my formulas were lining up with his findings. And then, of course, Detonator, who is just such an insane, wizard when it comes to Kingdom Hearts 1. He put a lot of us on the right path, and he also put me in contact with Majoris, so big shout outs. And of course, everybody in my community at Twitch, at the 1FM Rando Discord community. A lot of people helped, a lot of people supported, and a lot of people let me, send them walls of text and didn't get too upset with me while I was doing that. So I appreciate everybody who had input and helped. I wish I could give you all individual credit, but I simply don't have all of that information anymore. But suffice it to say, these are not the only people named who helped. There were tons of people who helped us get this far. And then, of course, I'm going to link it in the description of this video. But if you're not a part of our community over on Discord, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to check it. It is not my personal Discord. It is the Kingdom Hearts Randomizer Discord. You can find me over there. You can ping me. We have a great community. If you're interested in any of this, I'm happy to go into more detail about how the damage is calculated in this game or anything like that. But that should pretty much be a good primer on how to use this tool and what this tool set is for. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment below or leave it as a comment below. Or, you can get me on Twitch or Discord or whatever. Clearly, I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to go stop talking for now. But you all have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoy this tool. It was a lot of fun to learn how to make this. All right, take care, everybody.